What glaringly obvious thing took you forever to realize? I didn't realize that FedEx and Federal Express were the same thing for a very long time. On the opposite, I didn't realize that USPS and UPS were different things for a long time. I had friends with a dog. Dog's name was Diogy. About 3 years in, I realized suddenly, the dog's name was not Diogy, it was Dog. Oh, and that I'm an idiot. I used to work with someone who named their dog Diogy and they thought they were brilliant for doing so. Everyone who wasn't them thought they were a moron. I don't know what Diogy thought. It took me 21 years to realize that when people talk about Michael Myers from the Halloween movie, they aren't talking about the famous actor Michael Myers. I've been scrolling this thread for a while now, and this is the first thing I've read that made me go holy crap. When I was really little, my family used to go to Applebee's. I remember sometimes when we went, a clown would come out on a tricycle and make balloon animals. Young me was terrified and refused to go to Applebee's from then on. Later my parents told me about a new restaurant called Orange Fly. I found out later, in my teens, that Orange Fly was really Applebee's. My parents just renamed it in our house so we could still eat there. That the popular kids in school weren't all obnoxious, soulless conformists. Rather, they were just normal people with good social skills, and that having good social skills is a valuable thing. There were a few bad apples in the A-list crowd, of course, but most of them were decent folks. The reason they didn't want to be friends with me wasn't because I was too much of a rebel, a maverick, or whatever. It was because I didn't have the self-esteem to even give them a chance, and I was probably obviously kind of a mess. I'm shocked now at how entitled I felt to have everyone's adoring approval when I was that age, and how resentful I was not to have it. It's as if I thought that because I read The Stranger on my own I should be made prom queen and class president or something. I noticed that everyone finds some way to feel superior to others, even if that thing is that you don't fit in. When I noticed that in myself, I worked hard to stop that kind of thinking, yet it doesn't take much to fall back into it. What the little metal tab of a wine opener is for. I think 23, and had been working at a brew pub for 2 years when my coworker says, "Dude, how do you think the girls open the wine bottles?" I had been brute force yanking them out with just the corkscrew, but I could do it so fast that nobody noticed I was doing it like a idiot meathead. For those who would like to know, this is actually called a wine key. Trivial Pursuit is a double entendre. Obviously it's a trivia game and you are after trivial knowledge, but to play the game is meaningless in the grand scheme of things, so just another Trivial Pursuit. You know, in that 70s show where they smoke pot in the circle in the basement and laugh and have deep thoughts? Yeah, I didn't know that they were getting high until I was 23 or 24. I thought they were just really happy. To be fair, without a high enough resolution you really can't see the smoke. Hooters is not an owl restaurant. As a kid, I once asked my mom if we could go eat at Hooters, and she then got really annoyed. It took me around 10 years to understand why. Maybe due to being in the UK, but it took me a long time to realize that the map joined at the back, as a globe, and that Russia is America's neighbor. The Cold War made a lot more sense after that. Nukes would go over the top. When you tell someone see you later and they reply not if I see you first, they are actually saying that you won't see them because as soon as they see you they will avoid you. Or they intend to kill you before you get a chance to see them. Breakfast means breaking your fast, the fast being while you were asleep. I was 25 years old when I came to that realization. The fact that it took me so long to realize this really had me questioning my intelligence. It took me 18 years to figure out that Star Wars A New Hope was about how Luke was the New Hope. I always thought it was just a cool title. After watching Rogue One, some people think the New Hope was the plans to the Death Star. Ford Prefect on jumping into hyperspace in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's unpleasantly like being drunk. What's so unpleasant about being drunk? You ask a glass of water. I knew that line by heart since the 1970s, and it took me until the late 90s to get the joke. Dang. Same here. The unnecessary you makes the punchline less clear, I think. That Michelangelo's David is the same David that killed Goliath. Sorry if I'm an idiot, but I had never made that connection. Actually that one is just a statue. Don't laugh at me. That the term redneck comes from their necks literally going red from being out in the sun. I'm black. So keep in mind sunburns have never been a problem for me. About a month or so ago my roommate, who works in construction, came home and while he was sitting on the floor in his room I noticed how red the back of his neck was and commented on it. He goes, "I'm a redneck," and it finally dawned on me. He notices the look on my face and I immediately say, "Now don't laugh at me." And he goes, "You just realized where the term redneck comes from, didn't you?" and proceeds to laugh for a solid 10 minutes. These are apparently small things you miss if you're black. Honestly, a fair amount of idioms and words are connected with color and actually cause these things. That the Beatles is a pun. I never thought about it, because the Beatles are just the Beatles. They were bigger than the word play. But it's a pun on beat, like music, and Beatles. When it dawned on me at age 28 I felt like the biggest idiot. I realize this every time I spell Beatle wrong. Also, it took me until many years after to realize the Beats and Doug were a reverse play on words of Beatles. How much of an effect your diet plays on your health. It seems so obvious now that food is literally what makes you up, but it seemed like some phrase people say but never really resonated. Kind of like, when I was a kid I ate what tasted good and that continued on into my early 20s. I thought I ate pretty healthy because the frozen dinners and takeout had small portions of corn and other vegetables, right? When I got sick and would get medicines that wouldn't help me and doctors that didn't have much advice, I thought I was just broken before I even turned 25, and that my life was just going to be a constant battle. Then I started hearing people like Michael Pollan and Gary Taubes on podcasts and cut out soda, sugar and processed foods on a lark and started cooking things that didn't come from a box, and it was like a cloud was lifted. I know I need to cut out sugar, or at least cut way down, but I don't want to. It was last week that I learned what a POTUS and a FLOTUS is. I would see it scrolling through my Facebook feed and pass it thinking those two words were the new Bulls buzzwords, but I finally made the connection between the terms and the pictures. When I was younger people used to always have laser tag parties at Laser Quest. They said to shout out Marshall if you needed help. I thought the guy's name was Marshall every time I went and that he just had a haircut. I was a smart child. That snowflakes are actually itty bitty little things, and not those huge, magnificent works of art the size of people's heads you see in Christmas cartoons. I'm from Hawaii, but I saw snow quite a few times before I moved away for college. Still, it took me until I was 19 or 20 to figure that one out. Was pretty disappointed tbh. Adorable. I thought the Cold War was named that because it was potentially going to happen in the cold regions of the US and Russia. Sound logic. They're called pancakes because you cook them on a pan. To be fair though, I think this is because of the language barrier. In Mexico we call them hotcakes. That's not a translation BTW. We use the English words. Some people even pronounce it as jotquis. That old English surnames came from the professions that they used to. For example, tailor being a tailor and smith being a blacksmith. Hunter, farmer, baker, cooper equals maker of barrels, when that was a thing. That there is no artificial gravity on our spaceships like the ISS. Grew up watching so much Stargate and Star Trek that I just assumed it was a logical thing that already existed. Was well into my teens before I put that together. That little gas pump symbol by the gas meter on the dash of cars indicating what side the tank is on. I think I was in my late 30s when someone told me about it. The cars that I've owned have always had a little arrow next to the pump icon pointing to the side with the cap. Ned Stark's best friend was Robert Baratheon. Jon Arryn was his father figure. His brother was named Brandon. His sons' names are Robb, John, and Bran. Wasn't until I read the trivia. In Spaceballs there is President Scroob. That's Brooks backwards. Shout out to Mel Brooks. That child comments on Reddit on just comments that have been downvoted, like, as if they're immature children, but are comments branching from parent comments. Haha. Took me forever to figure out what parent meant. I'd never had a reason to click it before, so in my head I was imagining it being a button to scold the commenter, like shame on you Billy, go to your room, young man, IDK. Curry isn't a specific spice, neither is paprika. I never really thought about it. I just assumed they harvested curry seeds or paprika plants and made powders out of them. I knew that about curry, but not paprika. Not me. My girlfriend in college and through a little after. She was studying to be a teacher and had to do some kind of basic science class. She comes over after class one day and says, "Did you know penguins are birds?" Yes. Wait, you knew that? They have flippers and those fin things are wings. Yes. They just can't fly. How did you get this far without knowing that? I guess I never really thought about it before. They were just penguins. That the Disney character Pete is a cat. Took having my own kid get obsessed with Mickey Mouse Clubhouse to figure it out. I had a buddy in the Navy. We are hanging out off duty. He is cutting his nails. He looks up in astonishment and tells me, "I just realized if I don't cut my nails so short they don't hurt." I was recently sitting in our living room eating almonds, and I came to the realization that they taste an awful lot like almond paste. I then realized what almond paste is made of. Didn't tell anyone about that one. Americans call petrol gas because it's short for gasoline, not because American cars are powered by a gas instead of a liquid. OHH, I just remembered one. Up until 10th grade world history in high school, although the US colonies were like part of England, as in, physically, I imagined a very English appearing city that was densely packed and patrolled by redcoats, with cobbled streets littered with the writings of John Locke. They were basically British, except for some reason they weren't allowed to leave to colonies, and all of their goods had taxes on them because the British were evil and controlling and militaristic. Before having my mind blown in world history, I could have confidently told you a version of the Civil War that was way different than what actually happened. Apparently, I still like my version better. Honestly, I think it would make a cool old history work of fiction. State of the Union means the condition of the Union. I thought it was just the traditional name of the speech event for way longer than I care to admit. When I was a kid I thought it was like MVP, that the president was honoring a specific state, like, this year, the state of the union is Colorado, and then he'd talk all about Colorado or whatever the best state was that year, or so I assumed. I would cringe when my parents would pass those road signs that said "do not pass." I'd turn around and look for police. Once, in the earlier years of our relationship, my now spouse and I were packing for a short trip, and I was figuring out how to pack when we only needed 2 days worth of stuff but still needed to check a bag so we didn't wrangle our toiletries through TSA. My much smarter better half just looks at me and says we can just share a bag. I shatterpaused for a good minute. It had never occurred to me. She still teases me about it occasionally. Years ago, in the building that I lived in, there was a girl that I would make small talk with in the elevator and lobby. Casual, "Hey, great weather. Got any weekend plans" type stuff. Sometimes she was really happy to see me and wanted to talk a lot. Other times, she was weirded out in a "why the frick is this guy talking to me" kind of way. I noticed that when her hair was up she was friendly and when it was down she was standoffish. I thought maybe she was bipolar or something. Then, one day, the elevator door opens and there are two of her. My eyes got huge and I blurted out "twins" because I'm just smooth as heck. The girl I knew started laughing and the other one still looked at me like, "Why does this guy freaking talk to me?" Turned she lived with her identical twin sister. It took me a year to figure that out. My ex-girlfriend as well as her parents and sister never realized everyone in the Caribbean was black because they were descended from slaves. They just never thought about it. I think the native people and cultures would disagree with you that everyone in the Caribbean is black. I was surprised to learn that Nick Offerman is a real person and not a Zach Galifianakis character. Really threw me for a loop. How? That the cursive Q looks like a 2 because you're not making the loop big enough. If you exaggerate the loop so that it connects with the top of the letter, it actually looks like the letter it's supposed to be. Miss Easterbrook. That the extra clicks when you're turning your steering wheel with the turn signal on is the turn signal registering the turn and then turning off. Just thought my steering wheel liked to do some bonus clicks every now and then. The turn signal doesn't register the turn. What you're hearing are the cancelling cams, kind of like flappers. that let notches pins on the steering wheel bypass the switch going one way, but force the switch off going back the other way. There are two, one for clockwise, one for counterclockwise. Having mild autism, it took me an extended amount of time to figure out eye contact, polite smiling, many things that are implied but to me were not obvious. Countless times I couldn't figure out what I looked like to somebody else. It was hard to put myself in someone else's shoes. When my brother and I were kids, my mom told us that if you peed in a pool, a chemical in the water would make a red dot follow your butt around the pool and everyone would know you peed. I was embarrassingly old when I figured out that this was garbage, like 14 or 16. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.